You're watching an RH Reality Check production brought to you by rhrealitycheck.org.
Did you know that the federal government wants to define birth control as abortion? It's incredible, right? Well, I came to Maine, one of the most progressive states in the country when it comes to reproductive health issues, to find out what's going on. My first stop was south of Portland to meet Chris Quint from Planned Parenthood.
Birth control is clearly not abortion, but they heard from a lot of people saying this definition is wrong, this rule is wrong. So they said, all right, we're still going to issue a rule here, but we're going to make this incredibly unclear. We're going to leave this open for interpretation.
Right now, the Department of Health and Human Services is about to pass a regulation that will greatly expand your healthcare provider's right to conscientious objection. The new rule will allow doctors, pharmacists, even your doctor's secretary to refuse to give out any information about something that they find morally objectionable. I wouldn't call that a conscientious objection. I'd call it cruel.
It has a wide range of potential impacts here that are quite frankly very dangerous to what we do. This has the ability to impact women when they go to pharmacies to get emergency contraception. It impacts women going to private providers to get birth control prescriptions. It impacts the women's ability to have access to the full range of reproductive health care services. A lot of places in Maine, in Aroostook County, Washington County, which is the down east section of Maine, where there are already access issues without this rule in place. And I think this rule really has the potential to limit that access even further.
What do you think their motivations are?
If you look at the pattern of the Bush administration over the last 8 years when it comes to women's health, women's reproductive health specifically, and look at the time and time again, the attacks against women's access to reproductive health, women's access to abortion care, this fits the pattern of what they've done, and this is that kind of last parting gift to say, I'm still going to adhere to these real restrictive policies against women.
I can understand why Chris was pissed. Planned Parenthood takes federal money, and his hands are tied by regulations like this one, preventing him from doing his job. I headed 3 hours north to Bangor, to the only women's clinic in Maine that is 100% independent from federal cash. This is the Mabel Wadsworth Center, and Executive Director Ruth Lockhart says they haven't accepted federal money since the center opened almost 25 years ago.
What we saw was that the writing on the wall was that we made that connection that, oh, federal money could very well be restricted depending on what administration was in power.
But just because she doesn't take federal money doesn't mean she isn't upset by the proposed regulation.
And I worry that low-income women in particular, who are already in a vulnerable place in terms of what to do, that they will be very daunted. And I think actually this is the intent of the regulation, is to discourage women from accessing the services that are legal and safe and available to them.
The proposed regulation provides plenty of room for your healthcare provider to not only refuse to perform a service they find morally offensive, but also to refuse to even provide a referral to someone who can.
Once a regulation like this comes out, regardless of what the specifics are, it's often perceived as abortion is no longer legal, abortion is no longer available, you can't get birth control pills from your doctor, even though those things may not be true. And once you open up this Pandora's box, it will be easy to include other things that you're morally opposed to.
My last visit was to the recipient of the most federal funds for reproductive services anywhere in the state, the Family Planning Association of Maine, in the state's capital, Augusta. Sue McPhee is a vice president here.
In this particular situation, we have a very intensive 40-some page document that never once mentions the patient's right. And nowhere in these regulations, nowhere, does it ever address women in emergency situations. And I worked 10 years at a rape crisis center. And there are many traumas associated with sexual assault. And it makes no sense to me whatsoever for a healthcare practitioner to not be able to give even information about emergency contraception. And that, to me, is a crime.
And that's the essence of what I learned, that the regulation they're about to pass encourages refusals. It's one more step towards completely blocking safe and legal access to emergency contraception and abortion. And in my opinion, that's just one more example of the government imposing its socially conservative ideology on every American.